When my cousin Zachary got into law school, my parents threw a party that looked like someone won the Super Bowl, cured cancer, and proposed to Beyoncé all in one afternoon. They rented out a private hall at the Elks Lodge. Balloons that spelled "Zach Goes Legal" hung from the rafters in gold foil, swaying under the air conditioner. There was a 3-tiered cake with a fondant gavel on top and cupcakes with tiny edible diplomas. My mom wore pearls. My dad gave a toast. Someone brought a fog machine. I stood near the back with a soda that had gone warm, watching Zach shake hands like a politician already running for something. He wore a salmon-pink Ralph Lauren shirt tucked perfectly into tan slacks, the kind of outfit that made him look like a living LinkedIn profile. When the band struck up a soft acoustic version of Mr. Brightside, I quietly dipped out for air. I'm not saying I wanted a fog machine. But 2 weeks earlier, I'd earned my welding certification after grinding through night school while holding 2 part-time jobs. When I told my parents, my mom looked up from her phone just long enough to say, "That's nice, honey." My dad asked if I could fix the garage latch that had been sticking again. No hug. No handshake. No dinner out. They didn't even pretend to be impressed. If you'd met us growing up, you'd think Zach and I were both only children in separate houses. He got summer camps and private test prep. I got hand-me-down books with my name crossed out, and his still faintly visible underneath. He brought home B+s and got told he was gifted but bored. I brought home straight A's and got a shoulder pat and a reminder that grades aren't everything. The message was always subtle but clear. Zach was the one with potential. I was the one who'd figure it out. I remember once, I was maybe 11, I'd spent all afternoon building a birdhouse in the garage. No kit, no instructions, just me, scrap wood, and a bunch of rusty nails. I was covered in sawdust and proud as hell. I brought it into the kitchen, beaming. My dad barely looked up from the TV. "Maybe Zach can paint it," he said. Zach painted it turquoise and got featured in the church bulletin for craft excellence. I didn't touch a hammer again for 6 months. So yeah? The law school party didn't exactly catch me off guard. I tried to play along. Tried to smile as Zach recited his acceptance email word for word to someone's grandma. But it hit different now that I'd finally done something that mattered to me, and it still didn't matter to them. Later that night, after everyone else had gone home high on shrimp cocktail and Chardonnay, I sat in my truck in the driveway and scrolled through my photos. I had one of my welding exams, me in a flamer tartan jacket, holding a torch, grinning like an idiot. I almost posted it that night. Captioned it, "Passed my certification today. Took blood, sweat, and exactly 4 second-degree burns." But I didn't. Because I already knew what would happen. They'd say, "That's great," in the same tone you use when someone tells you they cleaned their garage. Then they'd pivot back to Zach's LSAT scores and what city he'd be practicing in by 2026. So instead I deleted the photo. And right then I decided something. If they couldn't celebrate me now, they'd read about me later. After the party, I didn't go home. I drove around with the windows down, letting the Montana night slap me with cold honesty. I ended up at the old train bridge just outside town, the one covered in rust, beer bottles, and half-faded graffiti. I used to come here when I was a kid. Not to drink or mess around like Zach and his crew, but to sit. Watch the sun drop over the ridge. Wonder if I'd ever be enough to matter. Growing up, I wasn't the loud one, or the brilliant one, or the one you bragged about at potlucks. I was the kid who fixed the leaky faucet before Dad noticed it was broken. The one who figured out how to wire the porch light using a YouTube tutorial and sheer willpower. No applause. Just, "Hey, that's working again." Meanwhile, Zach got a standing ovation for remembering to bring his science fair poster board to school. He was polished from the start. Debated teachers in class and still got extra credit. Wore cardigans in 8th grade. Got asked to mentor the other honor students by 10th. I once got suspended for putting a wrench through a locker door, not out of rage, but because I wanted to see if I could fix the hinge after. I could, by the way. But the principal didn't find that as impressive as I did. Zach got into Georgetown. I got into Butte Trade Tech after 2 years of scraping together tuition by bussing tables, changing tires, and working weekends at a cattle feed store that smelled like feet and regret. And still, I showed up. Trade school wasn't glamorous. It smelled like burnt metal and sweat. There were days my gloves melted to my skin and nights I came home with my eyebrows singed off. But there was something beautiful about it. The weight of a finished weld, the perfect bead, the hiss of cooling steel. That's where I felt real. Like I was building something that would last longer than anyone's compliments. When I passed my certification, it was supposed to be one of those moments where your life shifts. I imagined coming home and getting a clap on the back, maybe even a cheap sheet cake with my name misspelled. But instead it was, "That's nice, honey," from my mom, eyes still on her phone. And, "Well, can you look at the garage latch tomorrow?" from my dad. I remember I still had my work boots on. My shirt smelled like acetylene. My left hand was shaking from nerves and heat fatigue, but I was smiling. Until I wasn't. I went out that night and bought myself a slice of gas station cheesecake. Ate it in the parking lot of the welding school under one flickering light. There were sprinkles on it, which felt like a cruel joke. I didn't even tell them when I got hired at a local custom fabrication shop 2 towns over. It was a big deal, full-time, real benefits, a boss who knew what he was doing. I remember the shop owner, Wayne, handing me my new gear and saying, "You work like someone who got ignored a lot." I like that. He didn't say it with pity. He said it like a compliment. So I started showing up even harder. Stayed late. Took the garbage jobs just to prove I could. I practiced on scraps after hours. Experimented with techniques I saw in obscure YouTube videos and old welding magazines from the 90s. My hands were always nicked. My nails never clean. But I was proud of the grime. It meant I was building something. Back home, Zach was making headlines, literally. My mom sent me a photo of him on the university website with a caption, "Local scholar leads legal reform panel." When I told her I'd welded a spiral staircase for a luxury cabin up in Whitefish, she said, "Oh cool. Like that people can walk on." I stopped sharing after that. Not because I was bitter. But because I finally realized they didn't care about what I was doing unless it could be put in a frame and hung next to Zach's latest article or diploma. So I kept my head down and started drawing the plans for my own shop. If they weren't going to see me, I'd build something they couldn't ignore. It happened 2 days after Christmas. The kind of day where the snow's half melted into gray slush and everyone's pretending to still like each other through sheer force of leftover ham. We were at my parents' house for the family hangout, which basically meant Zach would sit on the couch talking about Washington politics while I fixed whatever appliance had died since my last visit. This time, it was the dryer. I was halfway into the laundry room, elbows deep in lint and stripped screws, when I heard them talking in the kitchen. The door was cracked open just enough. "Dad, I just worry he's wasting his potential." "Mom, he's good with his hands." "That's useful." Dad again, voice low but sharp. "Useful doesn't get you anywhere these days. It's not like welding's something you brag about." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. It was the kind of sentence that sticks. Not because it's surprising, but because it confirms what you've suspected all along. They didn't hate what I was doing. They just didn't think it mattered. I finished the dryer without saying anything. Walked out with my jacket zipped and my dignity holding on by a thread. Zach was still lounging, talking about summer internships in D.C., some opportunity to sit in on real litigation. My mom clapped her hands like he just discovered fire. I left before anyone even noticed. That night, back at my place, I sat at my tiny kitchen table staring at the plans I'd sketched for my dream shop. Iron and Ember, that was the name. I'd been playing with the idea for a while, but suddenly it didn't feel like a dream anymore. It felt like a necessity. No more waiting for them to see me. No more fishing for compliments from people who didn't even recognize the bait. I texted Wayne, my boss, and asked if I could pick up more weekend hours. He responded with, "If you're sure. Got a shipment coming in that'll break your back." I replied with a thumbs up and a gif of Rocky doing one-handed push-ups. Then I dug out the envelope where I kept my savings, cash mostly, tucked between welding tips and scrap paper receipts. Every tip, every overtime shift, every side job building railings or fixing trailer hitches for people who paid in beer and $20 bills. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to get something started. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed. I started driving around town during lunch breaks, scoping out every half-empty commercial building. I found one off the highway, an old muffler shop with peeling red paint and a sign that said, "For lease, inquire inside," like it was daring someone to take a chance on it. I called the number. The guy sounded surprised. "You want to lease that place?" he asked. "Most folks just ask if they can dump junk behind it." I signed the lease 2 weeks later. The floor was cracked. The walls needed paint. But there was a garage door and a workbench that just needed love. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents. Not Zach. Not even my mom when she texted me asking if I was still welding or whatever. I just kept showing up to my job, clocking out, and driving straight to my little rusted shop of dreams. Nights turned into early mornings. I scrubbed oil stains off concrete like they owed me money. I sanded rust off everything with the kind of focus usually reserved for heart surgeons and people trying to forget how it feels to be underestimated. Some nights, I'd stand in the middle of the shop, turn off all the lights, and just listen. The silence wasn't lonely. It was mine. That was the winter I stopped waiting to be seen and started building something they couldn't look away from. The first few months in the shop were brutal. It was January in Montana, which meant sub-zero mornings and a space heater that wheezed like it had asthma. My breath fogged up my face shield. I wore 3 layers of flannel under my welding jacket and still felt like I was slow roasting from the inside out. But every burn, every bruise, every inch of grime under my nails, it felt like ownership. I spent nights wiring up lights from salvaged fixtures. Installed a second-hand security camera system from a guy on Craigslist who looked like he knew too much about disappearing. Built my own steel sign from leftover sheet stock and spray-painted the name I'd been holding in my chest for months. Iron and Ember fabrication. No fanfare. No ribbon cutting. Just a man, a welder, and a dream powered by resentment and Red Bull. Business didn't boom overnight. I started small, custom fire pits, grill grates, railing repairs. A couple of jobs from Wayne's old clients who liked the idea of helping a young guy out. I gave discounts I couldn't afford and worked 14-hour days because I couldn't afford not to. Then came the dog gate. An older couple down the street, the Tanners, needed a decorative gate for their giant golden retriever, Moose, who had the destructive power of a wrecking ball and the emotional fragility of a toddler. I designed something from twisted iron bars and maple leaf inlays. When I installed it, Mr. Tanner stepped back, crossed his arms, and said, "Son, that's not a gate. That's a sculpture." They paid in full, tipped in homemade chili, and told everyone they knew. The orders started trickling in. First from neighbors. Then from strangers who heard about the welding artist near the highway. People came in asking for porch railings, restaurant signs, bike racks, even an abstract garden sculpture shaped like a flame. I made it in 2 days flat, sleep-deprived and wired on gas station coffee. The woman cried when I delivered it. Said it reminded her of her late husband's forge. That was the first time I realized I wasn't just welding. I was making things that mattered. And then came the news piece. A local paper did a weekend feature called Hometown Hustlers, highlighting small businesses that were bootstrapped from nothing. A journalist named Megan came by, took photos of me working on a spiral staircase, and asked questions about why I started welding. I told her the truth. Because I got tired of waiting to be invited to someone else's version of success. She raised her eyebrows at that. A week later, the article went live. Iron and Ember sparks a movement in Butte. They included a photo of me covered in sweat and steel shavings, smiling like someone who finally felt real. I didn't send the link to my parents. Didn't bring it up in the family group chat, which, at that point, I had muted for my own sanity. The last message I saw in there was my mom posting a blurry photo of Zach holding a coffee and saying, Future lawyer fuels up. Meanwhile, I was fueling up on the kind of grit you don't photograph. But the universe had other plans. Because the day the article hit newsstands, someone sent a paper to my parents' house. Not me. And definitely not by accident. The morning the newspaper hit, I was elbows deep in a commissioned piece, a modern fire pit shaped like a roaring bear paw, when my phone buzzed off the shelf. I ignored it. 10 seconds later, it buzzed again. Then again. And again. Until I finally wiped my hands on a rag and checked the screen. 12 missed calls. 4 voicemails. 3 texts from my mother, 2 from my dad, and 1 from Zach. I clicked open Zach's first. Zachary. Bro. Are you in the paper? Is this real? Then Mom. Mom. Sweetheart, you didn't tell us. Just saw the article. Oh my goodness. Let's talk soon, okay? Red heart. Then Dad. Dad. Well done. Didn't know you were doing all this. Give us a call. Give us a call. Like I was reporting in from a camping trip, not unveiling the business I'd quietly bled into for the last year. I didn't reply. Not right away. I sat down on the welding stool, grabbed a water bottle, and let the moment settle. That kind of silence? It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. A few hours later, when I finally texted back, I chose my words carefully. To Zach. Yeah, it's real. To Mom. Glad you liked the article. To Dad. Thanks. I left it at that. The next morning, they showed up. I just unlocked the shop, still wearing yesterday's hoodie, half a breakfast burrito in my mouth, when I saw their sedan pull up out front. Clean, white, and wildly out of place next to my soot-stained pickup and busted utility trailer. Mom got out first. She was wearing that coat she only brings out when she wants to seem presentable for important people, church council meetings, city functions, and apparently now, surprise visits to her welder son's business. Dad followed, more hesitant. He had that face he makes when he's trying to look impressed but can't quite believe he's supposed to be. I met them at the door, arms crossed, trying to stay calm. Mom beamed. This place is adorable. Adorable. Like I was running a candle shop out of a barn. I raised an eyebrow. Thanks. Dad wandered in slowly, looking at the walls. You, built all this? Nope, I said dryly. The elves handled it. He gave a short chuckle. Still sarcastic, I see. Still showing up late, I replied. They didn't laugh. We stood in silence for a second too long, the air buzzing with all the things we weren't saying. Finally, Mom broke the tension. We had no idea you were doing all of this. Why didn't you tell us? I wiped my hands on my jeans. Because the last time I told you anything about welding, you asked if it was a real career. Remember that? She blinked. That's not fair. We were just worried about your future. You threw Zach a party for getting into law school, I said. When I passed certification, you asked me to fix the garage door. Dad sighed. You know we've always supported both of you. No, I said, voice low. You supported Zach with pride. You supported me with errands. They exchanged a glance. One of those. We didn't realize. Glances that only show up after public recognition makes you rethink your parenting choices. I built this because I had to, I said. Not just to prove something to myself, but because I knew you weren't going to do it for me. Silence. Then Dad stepped forward. Cleared his throat. I saw the piece in the paper, he said. The staircase you made. That was impressive. Really. I don't say that lightly. He didn't. Which made it hit harder than I expected. Mom nodded. We just want to be part of your life again. I looked around the shop. The smell of steel and paint. My name on the sign. The framed newspaper article now hanging crooked near the coffee maker. You're welcome to visit, I said. But I'm not shrinking myself again to fit into your definition of success. They nodded. A little stunned. A little ashamed. But they didn't argue. Before they left, Dad hesitated by the door. You ever thought about making one of those big backyard smokers? he asked. I smirked. For you? He raised a hand. Just asking. I let him hang in the awkward silence for a beat before I answered. Depends, I said. You bringing brisket or just expectations? He laughed. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel forced. A week after the article dropped, business doubled. Someone must have shared the piece on Facebook, because I got 5 quote requests in one morning, 2 for gates, 1 for a bar's custom patio railing, and 1 for a steel memorial bench. The 5th one was from a woman who wanted a statement fire pit that screamed both wealth and trauma. Her words, not mine. I was finally making more than enough to cover rent and material costs. Even started dreaming about hiring someone part-time. Maybe a kid from the trade school. Pay it forward. Then Zach texted me. Zachary. Hey man. Just saw another post about you. You're seriously blowing up, huh? I stared at it for a while. Not because it was mean, it wasn't, but because I couldn't figure out the tone. Was it proud? Surprised? Jealous? I went with neutral and typed. Me. Shop's doing okay. Staying busy. He replied. Zachary. Crazy, man. Who knew welding could get you in the paper? And there it was. The slip. I typed a reply twice and deleted it both times. Finally settled on. Me. Crazy, right? Who knew law school could leave you $200,000 in debt? He didn't answer after that. The next time I saw him was at Great Aunt Linda's birthday. She was turning 90, and nothing short of an actual earthquake was going to keep Mom from forcing both of us to show up. Zach arrived in a navy blue blazer, aviator sunglasses, and the kind of cologne that screamed, I work out but mostly to maintain jawline aesthetics. He walked in like he owned the room. I showed up in work boots and a clean black button-up that still smelled faintly like solder. Not on purpose, it's just who I am now. The whole extended family swarmed him first. Hugs, squeals, compliments. How's DC? Are you still top of your class? Have you met anyone special? Then Aunt Terry spotted me. Oh. Jesse, we saw your article. That fire staircase thing was amazing. You always were so good with your hands. I heard Zach pause mid-sentence. He didn't look at me. Not right away. But I saw the way his jaw clenched just a little. Later, while I was helping fold up plastic chairs, because of course I was, Zach wandered over and leaned against the wall. Didn't know your shop was doing that well, he said casually. Didn't know you were still in town, I replied. He shrugged. Taking a semester off. Burnout, you know? I nodded slowly. Burnout. Yeah. I've heard of it. Usually happens after 80-hour weeks and heat stroke. He forced a laugh. You always had jokes. I always had a job, I said. He raised his eyebrows. What's that supposed to mean? I turned toward him. It means I worked while you were building your LinkedIn. I sweated through classes with no AC while you got internships with catered lunches. You got fruit baskets for passing exams. I got calluses. He held up his hands, all soft-palmed and lotion-smooth. Fair. For a moment, we just stood there. 2 boys who were never really boys together. Same blood, different planets. Then he surprised me. I'm not good at stuff like this, he said. But what you've built, it's legit. I blinked. He looked down at his shoes. Sometimes I wonder if I'm just doing what I'm supposed to. You, though, you seem like you're actually living it. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded. We weren't friends. We weren't rivals. We were something in between. Before he walked away, he added one last thing. If you ever need a legal contract drafted, I'll do it pro bono. And just like that, the golden boy offered me something without trying to shine. Progress, I guess. 3 months later, I threw my own party. Not out of spite. Not to prove anything. But because I'd hit a milestone I once thought lived in the realm of impossible. My first year of Iron and Ember ended in profit. Real profit. Not just rent's paid, ramen's covered. Survival. I'd paid off the loan for the shop's new compressor. bought a plasma cutter with cash. And for the first time in my life, I could look at a calendar and not flinch at the first of the month. So I decided to celebrate. Quietly. Honestly. My way. No tent. No cupcakes with gavels. Just a smoker full of ribs, cold drinks in a tub, and a dozen friends who'd seen the worst and showed up anyway. Wayne came, wearing a leather vest that looked like it had survived a war. He handed me a rusty old wrench and said, "It's cursed. I thought you should have it." Joe brought her homemade mac and cheese and told me she was proud of me in that low-key, no eye contact way that hits harder than any Hallmark card. Even Mrs. Tanner came, moose too, wearing a bow tie. She handed me a photo book of all the projects I'd built around town, printed off Instagram and wrapped in a kitchen towel. And for the first time ever, I didn't look around the gathering and wonder who wasn't there. Until my phone buzzed. "Mom, saw the invite on Joe's page. Looks like a lovely gathering. We're happy for you, sweetheart." Dad, separately. "Hope those ribs are the good kind. Maybe next time you'll invite us." I stared at the messages for a moment, then slid the phone into my back pocket. Not because I was angry, but because I'd finally stopped living for applause that never came. After everyone left, I sat on the shop's front step. The sky was streaked in purple and orange. My boots were off. Bruno, the mutt Wayne gave me last winter as a guard dog, who mostly naps, was snoring beside me. The silence felt like peace, not absence. I looked around at the walls I'd painted, the beams I'd reinforced, the tools that had outlasted my doubts. Every inch of that space had been earned in sweat and splinters. I thought about the boy who used to hand in projects early and quietly hope someone noticed. Then I thought about the man who didn't wait anymore. That night, I opened the shop's back door, turned up the old stereo Wayne left behind, and danced like an idiot in my welding boots. Just me. No spotlight. No audience. And for once, that felt like enough. Spring came late that year. Snow clung to the sidewalks like it had rent control, and everyone was tired of gray skies and boots with no grip. But inside the shop, something had shifted. The old place didn't echo anymore. It sounded full. Tools clicked. Metal hissed. Joe's brother, who I'd brought on as part-time help, cursed under his breath while wrestling with a rail job. Bruno snored from his bed next to the heater like he owned the lease. A local high school kid named Eli hung around on weekends, shadowing us for school credit and asking 100 questions that reminded me of me at his age, curious, quiet, and waiting to be seen. The back wall now held framed photos of the shop's first builds. The staircases. The benches. The leaf gate. A photo of me in the local paper, standing in front of iron and ember, covered in soot, arms crossed, proud as hell. Above it all, I hung something new. A quote, laser cut from steel and bolted into the wall. "You don't need permission to matter. I didn't come up with it." Wayne said it once, half drunk and fiddling with a busted MIG gun. But it stuck with me. Especially now. Because the thing about being overlooked your whole life. It makes you build foundations that don't need approval. They don't need validation. They just hold. I still talk to my parents, occasionally. We text. Exchange photos. They came by the shop once in early spring and brought a lemon pie. Mom asked if I'd ever considered franchising. Dad mentioned a friend who wanted a gate installed. I smiled. Said I'd think about it. But I didn't invite them into the back office. Didn't show them the books. Didn't give them ownership of something they hadn't built. Zach called again too. He'd gone back to law school, but something in his voice was quieter now. Said he might move back to Butte eventually. Said he envied the way I'd built something with my hands. "Don't know if I'm allowed to say it," he added. "But you did good, man. You can say it," I told him. "You just might have to mean it." He laughed. Said he did. Maybe he does. But I don't need him to. Because now, when I wake up, I'm not chasing someone else's milestone. I'm running my shop, training Eli, fixing things that matter, building pieces that last longer than most people's promises. Iron and Ember isn't just a name anymore. It's the proof. You don't have to be the favorite to win. That you don't need an engraved cupcake to make your mark. That sometimes, the ones they overlook end up building the kind of legacy you can't fake on Instagram. And if anyone asks? Yeah. I'm that welder from the paper. But more importantly, I'm the guy who showed up when no one else clapped. And stayed anyway.